Welcome to Noir Alley, TCM's sketchiest neighborhood. I'm your host, Eddie Muller. Today, I'm pleased to welcome someone who was mostly a stranger to these parts. Doris Day, one of the brightest stars of the 1950s, takes a rare walk on the wild side in Julie, released in 1956 by MGM. It was the second film made by Arwen Productions, a company owned by Doris Day and her husband, Martin Melcher. Day had played straight dramatic roles before, but by the mid-50s, she had established herself as one of the biggest stars of the era, with her recent hits for Warner Brothers, Calamity Jane, Lucky Me, and Young at Heart, all focused on her gifts as a singer, one of the most popular in the world. But in 1955, Doris Day opted to leave Warner Brothers and broaden her range as an actress. She gave a compelling performance as 1920s singing sensation Ruth Etting in the MGM musical biopic Love Me or Leave Me, opposite an Oscar-nominated Jimmy Cagney. She followed it up with a dramatic turn in Alfred Hitchcock's 1956 thriller The Man Who Knew Too Much. Her husband, who'd been managing Day's career since they married in 1951, thought it was time for them to make a picture independent of a studio, so they'd have a stake in the profits. The project turned out to be a script written by veteran independent filmmaker Andrew Stone, who, along with his wife and business partner, Virginia Lively, had been making profitable, low-budget thrillers since the beginning of the decade. Pictures like Highway 301, The Steel Trap, and The Night Holds Terror. Stone's script was originally called If I Can't Have You, and he'd hoped to make it with rising star Anne Francis. When Melcher showed interest in the property, the Stones knew a much bigger payoff was in store with Doris Day as the star. Except, Doris Day didn't want to make the movie. She called it a sick film, as it revolved around a wife who discovers that her suave and continental husband, played by the suave and continental Louis Jourdan, is actually a psycho who bumped off her first husband. Day said the script brought back unpleasant memories of the abuse she'd endured in her first two marriages, especially the first, to trombonist Al Jordan, who, after she'd gotten pregnant in 1942, beat her badly in an attempt to force a miscarriage. But Doris Day was nothing if not a trooper. She agreed to make the film, which would be shot almost entirely on location, both in Carmel by the Sea and the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, this was par for the course with Andrew Stone, who preferred actual locations to studio sets, although you're going to see some pretty obvious back projection driving scenes. Shooting the picture was misery for its star. Doris Day and Martin Melcher were Christian Scientists at the time, and Day tried to will herself through fits of intense abdominal pain during production. Turned out she had a stomach tumor that required emergency surgery. The one bright spot for Day was the friendship she developed with Louis Jourdan. He was eager to play something against type, and here he is thoroughly rotten and despicable. I'm not spoiling anything. We know the score about this guy from the very first scene. This isn't a slow burn story about a woman gaslighted by a devious spouse. It's a breakneck suspense picture, an early example of what would later be known as a stalker film. In the end, the film was a popular, if not critical, success. Andrew Stone's script was nominated for an Academy Award, as was the title song, sung, of course, by Doris Day. She lost. To herself. For whatever will be, que sera, sera, which she sang in The Man Who Knew Too Much. The climax of this picture is, quite honestly, the reason it exists. It's the idea around which Andrew Stone built the script. I'm not going to spoil it for those of you who haven't seen it, but it's an extended, over-the-top suspense sequence that has been imitated and parodied many times since 1956. It makes the film memorable, and it also earned it a place on the list of the 100 best bad movies of all time. Of course, bad is relative. From 1956, here is Doris Day as Julie.